Hello, I'm Jacob. This is the Prepper's Bunker Outdoors, and I want to talk to you today about a hot topic, which is Civil War #2. To give a little bit of quick backstory, since most of the viewers of this will not be subscribers of this channel, I did serve in the military, in the Army as an infantryman. I did deploy to Logar Province, Afghanistan, and earn my combat infantry badge. More importantly, however, I worked with PSYOPs, transporting those guys around a little bit. And then after my deployment, I began working in COIST, which meant that as a grunt, I was working directly with the S2 shop, which is your kind of secret guy information shop, to connect the S2 shop to the boots on the ground. So my job was to make sure that the commander and the boots on the ground knew what they were looking for, and to make sure that what we were looking for, if found, was well documented, and the information that was needed would get back to the S2 shop. So I kind of became the military intelligence in-between guy. And so why this is important to this discussion is I got to see a lot of how the flow of information worked and how important it is to any struggle, insurgency, war. In anything other than a straight up conventional war, what you're really fighting for is a flow of information. We view Civil War #2 as American patriots and people who value their liberty and hard-working blue-collar Americans versus purple-haired feminists. And when I talk about purple-haired feminists, we're talking about all of these people who either don't work or they don't work a good job. They complain for more money, but they're not working to improve themselves to become more valuable. They want everything given to them. They want everything scary taken away. They don't want responsibility for anything in their own life, their well-being, their security, and they want to breed rampantly and be consistently inebriated. And this does not sound like a very difficult enemy to overcome. And that in itself, they aren't, okay? They wouldn't be, of course. That's the first thing that always gets brought up. The problem is that these people are human livestock. These people are sheep. And the sheep might not be difficult to slaughter, but the herd always has a shepherd that is leading them, and the shepherd has a village. This is where information becomes key. So all of these people, their livestock, they're generating revenue for the village, Big Brother, the machine, whatever. They're generating revenue, and they will not stop, and they can't be reasoned with because they're too freaking stupid. They're just, and if they're not too stupid, they have been educated to believe that a good time is inebriation, and they're killing brain cells as fast as they can in order to become too stupid. And the reason that this is important is people who are more conservative have always sucked at controlling the narrative because we don't believe in controlling the narrative, we believe in the truth. I believe on my YouTube channel that if I get onto this screen and I tell you guys the truth, that a couple of people will agree, maybe share a video, and maybe people will think about things a little bit differently. But I'm not thinking about how I'm going to spin this and how I'm going to push a narrative and how I'm going to push on your emotional triggers, how I'm going to... This channel here, this is me. I am not the face of some giant corporation that has this giant agenda. This is just me, and really that's what conservatives are. You know, as a conservative, and I'll talk about this in a moment, we work hard, we raise a family, we have some level of morals, and we want some level of freedom, okay? And so what we're up against is all of these people who don't want to work, who want to be constantly inebriated, who want to breed everything and anything as quickly as possible. And they are all supported and enabled through the federal government, because all of these people create money for the government. They destabilize the population, and a destabilized population is easy to rule. Whereas a population of well-educated, well-armed, and pissed off people is really, really hard to rule, okay? So it's really hard for me to force you to do what I want, right? If you're well-armed and intelligent. So the government doesn't want that. Which means that Civil War number 2 would not be American patriot versus purple-haired feminist. And more importantly, we've been lied to about the political spectrum. The center of the political spectrum is a constitutional republic. And to the right of that is anarchy, to the left of that is totalitarianism. We've been lied and told it's this stupid horseshoe, which makes absolutely no sense. But the problem is people like me who are trying to talk about liberty, to tell people that to get liberty, you have to accept responsibility. They cannot be separated. The problem is, even people who are more conservative are going to fight against that because to some degree they don't want to take responsibility. Take gun control, for instance. The Second Amendment says the federal government cannot make gun laws, period. Well, we've had our heartstrings played and everybody wants to get up there and say, well, what about felons? What about violent people? Okay. They use the exact same argument as the liberals or as the enemy, with a little bit different flavoring. They draw the line at a different point because they still want their freedoms and they know that they believe it, but they still believe that someone should be able to choose who does and who does not. Even though, it says God-given, inalienable, shall not be infringed, things that are absolutes. So while the liberals, they don't have to all be unified. Like, we should all be unified under liberty as conservatives, as a constitutional republican. We're not. All the enemy has to do, and this is how Satan works as well, all the enemy has to do is create small amounts of change from what is right, and they win by increment. And that's why it's more difficult for conservatives to spread a message and have solidarity, because the very goal of the enemy is to destroy solidarity. Okay, so we're talking about who's going to be fighting here. It's not purple-haired lady versus patriots. It's going to be federal government versus a few people. Another thing to consider, patriots will not be viewed as patriots. The control of information is what our government is good at. You will be labeled a terrorist, and you'll be hated by everybody. Look how easy that was to do in Waco, Ruby Ridge. In fact, you can look at the Civil War and how the entire South was labeled, and to this day our history books have labeled the entire South. Well, if you hate the South for what they're doing, then the massacre of man, woman, child, beast, everything, it doesn't sound so bad. They're bad people. They wanted slaves. Except, there's this whole financial crash, gold going down the ocean off of California, raising tax rates, overreaching federal government regulations. All of this leads to slavery as a rally cry because the barefoot fool has lived this way with slaves his entire life, and the northern yuppie absolutely hates slavery, so it becomes this whole rallying cry. But none of that would even be possible if it wasn't for overarching federal reach, taxation. It's all a bad deal. And so the first thing that the federal government is going to do is they're going to start a smear campaign against their enemy, right? And you can see this done countless times. And this is the PSYOPs deal, by the way. You can see it's done countless times in any country that's ever gone to war, but of course, old Goebbels and the Nazis were pretty good at it, and through Operation Paperclip, we probably brought a lot of them over here so that to help us perfect it as well, which is what we really see. Final point here, in a video that's already far too long: never in the history of a revolution has the revolution been entirely separated from outside intervention. So let's say that we go to war with the federal government and we win, right? We take them down. You think that China's just gonna let our debt be forgotten, and that the entire world, which is all a socialist cesspit, the entire thing, except for America to some degree. I mean, we've been socialist since 1989, but far less socialist because we still have a couple of patriots that appreciate their freaking liberty. The entire world, you think that they're going to just let this new freedom-loving government step in? Do you understand the amount of money that could be made by any country who could take all of America? Or any country who could take a piece of America? You think that we're just going to step in and remove the federal government and then just stay there and live happily ever after under the original Bill of Rights and Constitution as the Founding Fathers intended? No. We know that this one world government is coming. We know that our politicians are puppets for another entity in which all the other politicians for other countries are also puppets. So how in the crap could you believe that we could have an internal civil war? The reality is that if Civil War number 2 comes, which every time we get close to it, we go into a world war, historically. Look into that a little bit, that's fun. Every time we get close to a civil war, or the people start realizing that they're being lied to, we go into a world war, and then you will go fight. Even if you hate the government right now, you're probably gonna go fight, right? And then when you get home, you're gonna be too freaking tired to fight anymore, and we'll just start the whole cycle over again. And but if we did have the Civil War, you'd be labeled as a terrorist. Everybody would hate you. You would die, and you'd go down in the history books as an extremist, probably Christian lunatic. Whether you're Christian or not, because that's going to be the key word for hatred. It already is, but it's going to be the standardized keyword for the most hated group in a very short time. So there you go, guys. Like, if you're all, yeah, boogaloo, woo! You probably should be thinking more like, let's freaking leave and find some inhospitable crap hole to call our own, because you're not gonna make progress here. That's not how this works. I don't like saying that. That's kind of depressing. The boog sounds a lot more fun. Anyways, I'm sure I'll hear all your thoughts in the comments section below. Maybe you thought about something. Look up PSYOPs. Look up the financial crash before the Civil War. Look up Waco and try to find any official legal charges that were brought against them. There were none. Just accusations. There was never nothing was actually ever official. And then they murdered all those children, and all one person had to say was like, oh, it was my fault. And then Janet Reno was like, oh, no, it was my fault. No, it was my fault. Everybody's like, oh, okay, well, whatever. They're extremist psychos anyways. They can die. Whatever. It's just, the boog ain't happening, guys. It's just not. And so, more realistically, status quo will continue. If you're a freedom-loving individual, you will either die and feel like or you will stay home knowing everybody else is going to die, feel like a coward for the rest of your life, and maybe resist for the rest of your life if you stick around, you know, or whatever. But this whole, I don't know, like, I haven't seen a single person talk about the boogaloo who has thought anything past going and shooting at people, and most of the people that talk about it have never shot at people before. So, all right, talk to you later.